welcome back. I am the Darklight Emissary, here to guide you through a reflection on each of these legions and their Primarchs, and what you can expect from them if you are new, and if you are not so new, some speculation about what I feel could be the case with them in the future, and presently, how I feel about them, from over a decade plus of reading the books and the lore. Now, this episode is on the 10th Legion, the Iron Hands Legion, and their Primarch, the Gorgon, Ferrus Manus. Now, one of the main things to first understand about this Legion is that they are and were amongst one of the most harsh legions. We talked already about the Iron Warriors and kind of how gritty and in the mud they get on things. The Iron Warriors look at the Iron Hands and ask them if they are okay, because the Iron Hands take everything to the nth degree in terms of being a very gritty, heavy-handed force. And one of the main things about the Iron Hands that is unique compared to the other legions is they have a great connection to and affinity to the Adeptus Mechanicus, or Mechanicum, the priesthood of Mars, basically the machine priests that keep most, if not all, machines in the Imperium running through a dogmatic religion based on worshipping a machine god called the Omnissiah, which most of the tech priesthood of Mars believes is the Emperor. But, there are some more radical factions that believe otherwise, but they probably are not going to be talking about that, since that's radical, and we'll see you destroyed. But I digress. So that's one of the main things with the Iron Hands, is that they have probably the best relationship with the Mechanicum out of any of the legions, and as chapters later on as well. And just like the Mechanicum, the Iron Hands are all about ritualistically removing biological parts of their body and replacing it with machine parts. There is rumors about the Iron Hands that they are, that some of them might be completely machine, but nothing specifically has been ever proven on that. No one's ever going to get close enough to an Iron Hands legionary to ask them nicely or be able to capture them intact, probably. So that's not happening. So one of the things, Ferrus Manus is an interesting Primarch in that we don't have a ton on him. In fact, for any Iron Hands fans out there, I know your pain of the fact that there isn't as much on Ferrus Manus as some of the other Primarchs. Ferrus crashed on a world that was harsh and volcanic. The people there live in giant mechanical convoys and mine the planet. And Ferrus Manus never united the planet under his rule, really. He thought that the warring clans made better recruits for his legion, so he left them as they were. And one of the other unique things about Ferrus is when the Emperor found him, they fought in battle against each other. Ferrus wanted to test his mettle against the Primarch, or against the Emperor, not the Primarch. And as far as I can recall, nearly none of the other Primarchs fought the Emperor directly. Only Ferrus did. And obviously, with the Emperor being who he is, he was holding back against Ferrus. I don't think Ferrus is somehow some really more powerful Primarch that could go toe-to-toe with the Emperor. It's obvious the Emperor just wanted to prove to Ferrus who he was. Because Ferrus Manus, as far as personality goes, is much like his legion in that he's a harshly uncompromising individual. What he believes is the right course is what it is, and there's going to be no convincing him of any other path otherwise. In fact, kind of going back to Rogal Dorn for a few seconds, I was talking about how he is kind of a taciturn, very strong-willed individual. But Dorn could be convinced to go with different courses of action and would discuss with you different courses. He argued with Ferrus over whether to destroy or not a world. Rogal Dorn did not want to destroy it. He wanted to comply the world. And Ferrus Manus wanted to destroy it. I think Rogal Dorn went out on it, but Ferrus was not thrilled with that. He probably held a grudge against Rogal Dorn a little bit after that. One of the other unique things about Ferrus is that his hands are made of living silver metal. It's speculated he destroyed some sort of Necron construct, and when shoving the construct into lava to kill it, it melted and covered his hands in this silver alloy. It makes his hands extremely durable, as you might imagine, and he can use those hands to great effect with creating weapons and different things craftsmanship wise. And this kind of leads into another thing about Ferrus is that he ends up with a legendary friendship with Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children Legion. They meet each other on Terra, and each of them challenge each other to create a weapon better than the other in a smithing competition. And Fulgrim creates a hammer, and Ferrus Manus creates a sword, and they're both, exquisitely unique weapons, very great detail from both these Primarchs. And both Primarchs claimed that the other one's work was better than their own. So they kind of ended up in a stalemate in the competition, and they gave each other's weapons as a gift to remember them each other by as they went off on their own campaigns in the Great Crusade. But there was always that bond between the two legions, which is interesting because the Iron Hands couldn't be any more different from the Emperor's Children. The Emperor's Children were all about, they were very fashionable. They wore their purple regal panoplies of war, and were all about like reading books and art and stuff like that. And the Iron Hands are like as Spartan, just iron everywhere type of deco you can imagine. I imagine they did not like remembrancers very much, whereas like the Emperor's Children embraced them. Now you could say that part of why the Iron Hands did not fall to chaos is because of that, but any of the legions are capable of falling to chaos. It's just that the Iron Hands did not. They didn't have an opportunity like the Emperor's Children did. And so this happens in the Fulgrim novel, and I'll bring it up now because it has to do with the Iron Hands. But Fulgrim, when he was preparing to betray the Emperor and the Loyalists, he wanted to bring Ferrus Manus and the Iron Hands onto the traitor side. So did Horus, because Horus thought that Ferrus was one of the better minds of the Primarchs, and the stability of the Iron Hands was greatly wanted by Horus on his side. Long story short with Horus eventually complains about how broken his side is. He ends up with a lot of the cast-offs, quote unquote, so to speak, with the exception of like Perturaba and the Iron Warriors, which he ends up leaning on heavily. But he really wanted the Iron Hands for that like needed stable center, I guess you could say. So Fulgrim goes to Ferrus's capital ship. He pulls his fleet alongside He pulls his fleet alongside Ferrus's fleet and goes on board and meets with Ferrus in his personal chambers. And Fulgrim is like, hey, this is the plan. We want you on board with us. And Ferrus, being, as I mentioned earlier, very one-track minded when he decides to be, was like, absolutely not. I can't believe you're even thinking about turning on our father. What's the matter with you? And they end up in a conflict in his personal chamber. Fulgrim ends up grabbing the hammer that he had forged for his brother, and he uppercuts Ferrus with it and knocks him clean cold unconscious. He does not kill him though, because at this point Fulgrim is not completely corrupted yet and still has mercy for his brother somewhat, and can't bring himself to just kill his brother unconscious on the floor. So he steps back out of the personal sanctum of Ferrus, and he enters into a circular room. And in this room is a bunch of Ferrus Manus's bodyguards, which are called Morlocks. They're a bunch of elite space marines in Terminator armor, and they are spread out in a circle around the circular chamber leading into his inner sanctum. Well, when they first arrived, the Phoenix Guard, which is Fulgrim's Terminators, all stood, took up a place next to each of the Morlocks. And because of the, previous camaraderie with these legions, the Morlocks were like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, come hang out with us. We're brothers in arms here. We're both elite guards for our brothers. We're double guarding them right now as they talk. Well, at a look to the first captain, who was standing nearby waiting for Fulgrim's signal, Julius, the first captain, yells out, Phoenician, and every single Phoenix Guard brings their weapon up at the same time, and in a fluid motion beheads the Morlock next to them and just decapitates a bunch of Ferrus's bodyguards. And then they swiftly exit the ship, probably killing a few Iron Hands on the way out, and then they broadside attack Ferrus's flagship and his fleet, and then fly off. So, of course, this leaves the Iron Hands very confused and angry, reasonably. And Ferrus is charged with going to Istvan 5 to meet the traitors in battle and bring them to heel for their traitorous ways. Now, Ferrus, being who he is, he kind of took the lead of the 3 legions that showed up at the Dropsite Massacre. That was Ferrus, Vulcan of the Salamanders, and Corax of the Raven Guard. These were the 3 legions that were there. They were promised additional legions coming to help them. As I mentioned, the Night Lords were one of those. The Word Bearers, another one. The Iron Warriors, another one. The Alpha Legion, another one. I believe those are the 4 that were coming in support of them. The only problem is all of those legions sent to reinforce these 3 were also all the traitors. So what ends up happening is not only does Ferrus not wait for those reinforcements, he's so angry with Fulgrim that he drops onto the world with the other legions in tow, and he goes and challenges him, and his legion go and challenge Fulgrim. They blaze way too fast and too hard into the Emperor's Children, and Fulgrim and Ferrus have a duel, and by the end of it, Fulgrim is using his Slaanesh Demon Zest Sword, and he has Ferrus eventually at his feet on his knees, and the demon takes control of Fulgrim at that point, and then beheads Ferrus Manus, and Ferrus becomes the first Primarch to ever be slain in combat and in general, unless you believe the missing Primarchs are not just missing but dead. But pretty much all the Primarchs and Space Marines, react with incredulity for a while that a Primarch was ever slain. The Iron Hands were brutally mauled by the Emperor's Children. Pretty much all of the elite parts of the Legion got destroyed utterly at Istvan 5. Nearly no Iron Hands made it off Istvan 5. And then the rest of the Legion that was spread throughout the Imperium, when they got word, some of them went completely insane. Some of them turned traitor, actually, which is surprising. I was rereading a bit of stuff about them, and I didn't realize that. Some of them became what's called Black Shields, which are basically renouncing all allegiances to any legion, just kind of becoming a renegade force, usually going after the traitors, but probably not always. And then the rest of them basically were staging guerrilla operations against traitors. One of the main forces ended up underneath a Iron Hand named Shadrach Medusan, and they went for the money. They tried to kill the enemy Primarchs in some in a gambit and failed ultimately. But gotta go for it when you can, I guess. So the Iron Hands spent the rest of the heresy kind of down and out because they got nearly demolished completely at the Dropsite Massacre. They eventually were able to recover some numbers, and by the 40k era, they are a very reclusive chapter and sub-chapters that broke off from them due to the Codex Astartes. They don't really have many friends amongst the other chapters, In fact, they seem to despise the Raven Guard. I don't know what the rivalry is there offhand, but they do not like to be near them. And the mention I saw was that, you know, they both were at like a victory dinner after a campaign that they shared together, and the Iron Hands wouldn't break bread with them. So the Iron Hands are a very bitter and angry legion and chapter after Ferrus's death. And what's interesting is they seem to have taken their Primarch's death worse than even, I would argue, the Blood Angels did. Now, the Blood Angels have the Black Rage, and that's a permanent psychological marker on them. But as a whole, the Blood Angels will get along with other chapters very well, in co-campaigns, things like that. The Blood Angels know how to restrain themselves now in combat compared to how they were in the past. They are kind of exemplars for as good as a Space Marine chapter could be. They will as much have a conversation with you than just rip you limb from limb if you are willing to have a conversation with them. But the Iron Hands are all just about ripping you from limb. There was a bit of an excerpt given about them that they took over a world, and after that world surrendered, they just summarily executed like a third of the world just because you showed weakness. We're just gonna now punish you for that, showing that weakness. It's like, okay, guys, you can pump your brakes a little bit. But yeah, and they've only embedded deeper with the Mechanicum as 40k has gone on. So in the 10,000 years from the Heresy onwards, they've only gotten more intrinsically tied with the Mechanicum, and the Mechanicum kind of uses them, I think, for some things. Because if you know anything about the Adeptus Mechanicus, they are a bunch of very shady priests indeed. They're probably one of the more terrifying factions of the Imperium, and maybe I'll do a video on them eventually. But they're a fascinating priesthood, but they are a terrifying one as well. And they would definitely want a pet Space Marine group as much as possible if they could get it, and the Iron Hands might gladly give that to them. They are a chapter that, if you do want to send in with a bunch of advanced heavy tech weaponry, they have a lot of armor, and armor, by armor I mean tank weaponry, artillery, specialized weapon systems. Because of their tying in with the priesthood of Mars, they have probably a lot more tech marines, and tech marines that are much of a higher status than in other chapters within their group. And I'm sure that those tech marines have access to better weaponry and tools through the Mechanicum than perhaps any other chapter in existence. So they've got those advantages going for them on a pure, just pragmatic level. But unless there's a psychological trait that isn't known about them, they seem to have a stable gene seed. But they seem to, as a whole, have changed with the legacy of the Primarch's death than any of the other legions, because I believe that Ferrus Manus did not approve of them being so bonded to machine and obsessed with machine worship. I think Ferrus gave them a more tempered view, and after they lost him, they kind of regressed into they almost retreated into themselves and became this more cold machine-like entity that only exists to hate their enemies with the utmost spite. With I guess you can say, an iron core of spite. The Iron Warriors are kind of known for that, but the Iron Warriors, I feel like, they're much more, I don't know, there's Iron Warriors that make jokes. I don't see Iron Hands making jokes. Iron Hands are all business and very, very angry individuals a lot of the time. And that being said, I tend to like the way they look a lot, and some of the artwork you're going to see in this video. Some of the art from the Horus Heresy era, especially, they just have a really cool aesthetic to some of their stylings and stuff. It's not just the color scheme with them, they've got some cool technological bits on their armor and things like that a lot of the time that I've always really liked in their artwork, especially in the Fulgrim versus Ferrus Manus artwork that will be in this video. There's a Space Marine on the right hand side. I'll probably pan the camera over for you to see him, but there's this Iron Hands Marine over there that just looks really cool to me. Another thing to bring up with them really quick is that the Iron Hands believe, with all machine things being holy to them, they believe that being interred in a dreadnought is the highest honor. Now, it's important to realize most Space Marines and Space Marine chapters believe that being interred in a dreadnought is not a punishment per se, but a bad fate to have. It's a way to keep your battle brothers useful after they are critically injured, but for the Iron Hands, they just think that that's just the best thing ever. So that's just another unique thing about them I wanted to bring up really quick. But anyway, as always, I do not want to ramble on these, but this is just to be a brief overview of things. And as always, please like and subscribe if you want to see more of these. Please comment in the comment section if you want to further discuss any elements of this or any of the other videos or legions. I really love to have discussions on this stuff. And I would love to hear your thoughts on anything. So, as always, bring your light into the dark places, and I will see you in the next episode. We are looking at the 11th Legion next. Or we would have been looking at the 11th Legion, but they are the other missing Legion. So, after I get through all the Legions, I'm going to probably do a brief speculative on what I think is going on with the 2 missing Legions, but so that brings us to the 12th Legion, which is the World Eaters and Angron, the Red Angel. So that'll be a fun one. A lot of the lore and books have been focused on them in the past, so there'll be a lot to talk about with them. So have a great day or night wherever you are, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you. Good night.